All right, so are you ready to dive into these stories you sent us?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because these are some creepy ones.
Definitely creepy, for sure.
Yeah. So let's get right to it.
Okay.
These two stories that you've sent us are pretty unsettling. You know, the kind that make you want to double check your locks before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Two different scenarios, but both leaving you with one question. What is really going on here?
Yeah, exactly.
They really make you think.
It's fascinating how both of these stories play with our perception of reality.
Right.
And it makes us question what we think what we perceive as true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like in the first story, we're dealing with a missing brother and this mysterious online forum for talking to the dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's got so many twists and turns, it'll make your head spin.
I bet.
And then in the second story, things get even weirder. We've got a mannequin girlfriend.
What?
Yeah, mannequin girlfriend. And the whole family seems way too comfortable with it.
Okay, that's strange.
Right? It's like, is everyone in on this creepy joke or what?
It seems like the common thread here is the potential for manipulation. Whether it's through technology or other people or even our own minds playing tricks on us.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all about messing with our sense of what's real.
Here goes the first story, guys. I found my missing brother on a forum for the dead. I never thought much about online forums until one of them brought my brother back. Ryan had been missing for 2 years. One day he went out to grab coffee and never came back. No suspicious activity on his bank account, no weird phone calls, no signs of struggle, just gone. The police said he'd likely been abducted, but without evidence, they couldn't do much. My family fell apart. My mom stopped eating. My dad stopped talking. And I just stopped feeling. Late one night, while spiraling through forums about unsolved disappearances, I stumbled upon a thread titled Messages from Beyond, connecting with the lost. It was buried deep within an obscure corner of the internet and full of people claiming to receive messages from the dead. It sounded ridiculous, but one comment caught my attention. A user named Echoing Void posted, "Sometimes the missing don't know they're gone. Sometimes they're here, looking for home." Below, someone replied, "How do you know?" And Void answered, "Because I am one." For whatever reason, grief, desperation, or lack of sleep, I created an account and messaged Void. I typed, "If you're really one of the missing, prove it. Tell me something only you would know." The response came within minutes. "What do you want me to prove? That you once broke Ryan's nose during a stupid fight over a game of Mario Kart? That he forgave you before you forgave yourself?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone about that. Not even my parents. It was just one of those childhood moments you carry like a secret scar. I asked, "Who are you?" Void's reply, "I think you know." The next few weeks were a blur. I spent hours every night talking to Void. He said the world he was in was a fractured reflection of ours. Familiar but empty. The sky was always gray. The streets abandoned. The air heavy with silence. He couldn't explain how he got there, only that he woke up in this place and couldn't leave. The more we talked, the more he sounded like Ryan. He even remembered details no one else could. Like the nickname he used to call our childhood dog, or how he'd secretly taped my embarrassing middle school dance recital to blackmail me later. One night, Void said something that terrified me. He typed, "They're watching me now. They don't like that I'm talking to you." I asked who they were, but his responses became cryptic. "The shadows. The ones who keep us here. They don't like noise." That was the last I heard from him for weeks. Then, a new message appeared in my inbox. "Do you want to see me?" Attached was a link to a live video feed. I hesitated but clicked. The stream showed a dimly lit street that looked eerily like the one Ryan and I grew up on. The houses were distorted, their shapes wavering as if viewed through heat haze. In the distance, a figure walked toward the camera. As they drew closer, I recognized his face. It was Ryan, but something was off. His eyes were too wide, his movements stiff, like a puppet on strings. He smiled at the camera, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was forced, unnatural. He raised a hand and waved. In the live chat beside the video, he typed, "It's me. I told you I was here." I couldn't move. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. Suddenly, the camera shook violently. The shadows behind Ryan began to shift and ripple. forming towering figures with jagged edges. They moved closer, their distorted limbs reaching for him. Ryan typed, "They're coming. You have to help me. Find the door." The feed cut out. I spent the next few days piecing together everything he'd said about his world, looking for clues about the door. It wasn't much, but he'd mentioned a specific place from our childhood. An old, abandoned cabin in the woods where we used to play. I drove there, half expecting nothing. The cabin was just as we'd left it, rotting and overgrown. Inside, I found a trapdoor beneath a threadbare rug. The ladder below led to a tunnel that stretched on for what felt like miles. At the end was a heavy iron door with strange carvings. As I touched it, my phone buzzed. A message from Void. "They know you're here. Don't let them in." Before I could reply, the shadows began to seep through the walls, crawling toward me like living tar. I shoved the door open and stepped through. I don't know how to explain what happened next. One moment, I was in the tunnel. The next, I was standing in the gray, empty world Ryan had described. The air was heavy, the silence deafening, and there he was, standing a few feet away, staring at me with wide, desperate eyes. "Ryan," I whispered, but before he could respond, the shadows surged forward. The last thing I remember is his scream. I woke up in my bed the next morning, clutching a piece of paper I'd never seen before. Written on it, in Ryan's handwriting, were the words, "Don't stop looking. There's another door."
Here goes the second story, and might I add, this one is off the wee mental charts. You will be utterly spooked. I'm either experiencing psychosis or my family is playing a cruel trick at me. It's a big jump between those two options. I get that, but at this point I truly cannot tell what the truth is. I think there needs to be a bit of context here. I'm 24 and live in the UK, but I was born in New Zealand, and that's where my parents and brother still reside. I moved abroad after university and haven't seen my family since before the pandemic. There's a lot of history there. Like most families, we have unresolved issues. The short of it is my parents and brother get along great, a complete unit, and I'm the odd one out. I think it's also important to admit I have been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. The rest of my family is normal. 2024 was the year I finally came home for Christmas. New Zealand, being Southern Hemisphere, has a summer Christmas, and I have desperately missed that. Birmingham can be so grim in winter, even with the Christmas decorations. I grew up with a summer Christmas. Barbecues, trips to the beach, a family game of touch rugby. That's what I missed. Maybe coming back would remind me that all those bad feelings I had about my family were just part of my own histrionics. That's something I'd been working on with a therapist, learning to accept that I had a catastrophizing tendency and things weren't always as bad as I remembered them. In New Zealand, summer homes are called batches. Our family one was near the beach in a town called Otaki. That's where we always spent Christmas. On the drive up, my parents revealed my brother, we'll call him Johnny, was bringing his girlfriend, Emmy. This is where things get weird. I'd heard a lot about Emmy. My parents adored her, and it was hard not to feel a little jealous. They spoke about it as if she was such a natural fit in the family. They'd all gone to Australia together, didn't invite me, and done a life-changing outback tour. I saw the photos on Facebook, but Emmy was always the one taking the photo. She was never in any frame. Admittedly, I'd spent a few late nights stalking Johnny's social media to try and gain more insight into Emmy. I had to admit to my therapist that a part of me wished they'd break up so my parents could see I wasn't replaceable with some other girl. I hated those feelings even if they were intrusive. Emmy had an Instagram, but it was locked down. All I could see was her tiny little profile pic, a mannequin head with a black wig. That told me nothing about her. Or I thought it didn't. My parents and I arrived first to the buck. Johnny and Emmy were coming up the next morning. It was hard to listen to my parents talk about all the memories they'd made since I'd been away. They'd retired, gone on cruises, tours, and made a comfortable life for themselves. They couldn't stop gushing about how great Emmy was for Johnny and how proud they were of my brother and what he'd accomplished. Not once did they ask me what I was up to or what was going on in my life. Not much was going on, to be honest. I had an admin job with no upward mobility, and I'd never had a serious boyfriend to write home about. Everything I'd done since getting my degree was disappointing. I'd barely even traveled the UK and Europe, fucking Brexit and a pandemic, because it was expensive enough going to Tesco. We saw the VW Golf pulling up the next morning. The favorite child had arrived. I made sure to bring enough anxiety medication on this trip. I almost considered doubling my dose just to make it through this Christmas. Johnny came in with the luggage. His dog barged past him and jumped right on me. I hated dogs. I was actually scared of them. He didn't tell me he was bringing a dog. By the time I got back from the bathroom and calmed myself down, Emmy and Johnny were on the couch in the living space. This may seem pedantic, but in the Bach we all had our sitting spaces. Dad got the green armchair, Mum got the rattan chair, and Johnny and I got the couch. He sat on the left and I sat on the right. Emmy, of course, was sitting in my seat. That's what I noticed first before I even figured out what else was amiss. Awkwardly, I went to the kitchen to get myself a spare chair and pulled it up to the conversation. Only then did I get a proper look at Emmy. It was a mannequin. She had a black wig on, but no facial detail. Only the faint outline of eyes, lips, and a petite nose. I could see the bendable joints had been positioned so she was sitting rigidly upright. "Oh," I said, laughing with surprise. I assumed it was a joke. Where's Emmy?" Everyone looked at me as if I'd grown a second head. Johnny looked at the mannequin as if it was talking, then back at me. "This is Emmy," he stated flatly. "You gone blind or something?" I looked to my parents to search for any answers. Neither of them had humorous expressions. They looked more concerned that I was going to ruin Emmy's trip. Okay, I'd play along. See how far this joke went. "Sorry, hi, Emmy," I said, awkwardly putting out my hand to shake. I looked at the rest of them for approval. Emmy did not shake my hand. No shock. Awkwardly, I retracted it. A moment of silence, then they all laughed at a joke I hadn't heard. The dog jumped on the couch and started licking the page-white plastic of the mannequin's face. Johnny laughed. Such a mama's boy. The joke did not relent. I went to my room and tried to regroup. My brother and I used to share a room, but now I had been put in the sleep out so he could share with the giant doll. My family had never been pranksters. This seemed excessive and like an exhausting show to put on. Was it going to be like this all Christmas? It was time to get some answers. I was too afraid to ask them directly because of how I was ostracized, so I went to call Grandma. Her and I had an affinity that I didn't have with the rest of my family. I tried to ring her, but she didn't pick up. Not too surprising given she was staying with my uncle and his kids for Christmas. She'd probably left her phone off. My mom swung by the sleep out with a very stern expression. "Why are you hiding out here?" she demanded. "You're worrying everyone." I apologized and said I would be back in soon. Mom started sliding the door shut and then paused. "Also, we need you to get over whatever you've got against Emmy. She was sensing that you didn't like her. She's a lovely gal, and I don't want her to feel unwelcome this Christmas. So, get yourself together and at least pretend you care about this family." Those words pierced me like icicles. She slid the door shut before I could even reply. If her goal had been to hurry me up to come inside, it only slowed me down because now I was crying. Why were they making me feel so guilty over a doll? It was just cruel. Dinner came and went. I watched Emmy out of the corner of my eye, but tried my best to play along. Laughing when the family laughed, asking questions to Johnny about how they met. They served her a plate of food, but she didn't eat any of it. Not surprising. Her position only changed when I was out of the room or not looking. My family must have been moving her. It was very unsettling. I moved to take my plate to the sink, and when I looked back, her head had been turned to face me. I shuddered and ignored it, doing my best to keep up a smile. As adults, we didn't exchange Christmas gifts anymore. I still brought them back little trinkets from the UK, but they didn't get anything for me. It was just a coincidence they all got each other a gift, including for Emmy. She got a bottle of perfume from Mum and Dad and a beach towel and swimsuit from Johnny. I had brought her a little statue of a bull since it was iconic to Birmingham. Maybe my family would start pretending it was a real bull and the joke would get bigger. We went to the beach as was a Kiwi tradition on Christmas Day. I forgot to bring a bloody swimsuit because it was hard to pack for summer when you were living in winter. I put on shorts and brought my Kindle. Mom took Johnny's dog for a walk along the beach while Dad and Johnny went into the water. That left Emmy and I on the beach towels together. She was sunbathing, and by that I mean she was lying completely flat with sunglasses plopped over her eyeless face. It's absolute crap that they're playing this game with me, I told her. She did not respond. Pretending you're real and all that. It's not funny at all. I don't get why they're doing it. Is it just because they hate me? I rolled onto my side and plucked the glasses off her face and put them on myself. She didn't need them. I then flicked her face. Sure enough, plastic. Mum came back first. Her smile instantly faded when she looked at Emmy. What's wrong, darling? She crouched down and listened to what the mannequin had to say. She said my name with all the scorn of a mother finding a child who broke the fine china. Why would you say those horrible things to Emmy? What is wrong with you? Johnny and Dad seemed to hear the commotion and came out of the water. I was now sitting upright, legs hugged to my chest as protection. Johnny looked so furious I was actually worried he'd hit me. You assaulted her? He asked. Fucking Christ. Did you come back from England just to make the rest of us as miserable as you? It all felt like a nightmare. How could they have known what I said and done to Emmy when none of them were around? Maybe they had some sort of audio recording device inside her, but at that point I was beginning to doubt myself. The ride back to the Bach was painfully silent. I shot off to the sleep out and began to pack my things. I don't know if it was just a joke or if I was insane. Either way, I had to get away from here. I wasn't wanted and I'd made things worse. I ordered an Uber to take me to Paraparaumu so I could get the train back to Wellington. I'd find some accommodation and get my flights changed so I could fly home earlier. Surely some hotels would have some room even if it was Christmas Day. Nobody came out to say goodbye as the car pulled up. I was grateful for that. I didn't want any more conflict. Only as I was driven away did I look back and see the mannequin standing in the window looking out at me. Grandma got back to me later. She didn't know about what had happened at the Bach yet. Have you met Emmy? I asked shakily. Johnny's, girlfriend? I have, she said joyfully. She's a bit quiet, but she's a lovely girl. I'm so glad you get to meet her this Christmas. I had a lot of time to think during the 30 hours of transit back to the UK. The entire experience felt so surreal. When my workmates asked how my trip was, I didn't mention any of the details about Emmy. Nothing had ever made me question my reality more in my entire life. Maybe I was experiencing some sort of psychosis stemming from my anxiety about seeing my family. Maybe they had set up some elaborate trick because they hated me so much and wanted me to stay away forever. Either option is horrifying. If you are loving listening to us so far, kindly hit the subscribe button to keep encouraging us. Thank you.
Okay, so let's unpack this first story.
All right.
It starts with this person who's desperately searching for their brother Ryan, who's been missing for 2 years.
Oh, wow. 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine after 2 years with no trace, you'd try anything, right?
Absolutely. You'd be grasping at straws.
Totally. So they come across this online forum called Messages from Beyond.
Messages from Beyond.
Yeah, it's for talking to the dead. And of course, they're drawn to this user named Echoing Void, who claims to be one of the missing.
Wow. So they're reaching out to try and connect with their brother.
Exactly. It just shows how we turn to technology, especially in times of grief.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right? We're all looking for answers and closure, sometimes in places we wouldn't normally consider.
Especially online.
Especially online. Yeah, and get this. Echoing Void starts revealing specific details about the poster's past with their brother, stuff that only Ryan would know, like a childhood secret about breaking his nose during a super intense Mario Kart battle.
Hold on, really?
Yeah, it's creepy, right? It makes you wonder, is it really Ryan or is someone playing a really cruel game?
Yeah, that's unsettling. It sounds like a classic manipulation tactic.
Right.
You know, establish credibility to gain trust. It's like they're drawing the poster deeper into this mystery.
Oh, yeah.
Making them more vulnerable to whatever Echoing Void has planned.
And that's exactly what happens. They get sucked in. Echoing Void describes being trapped in this fractured reflection world.
Fractured reflection.
Yeah, it's this gray, empty version of our reality. He says he remembers his life, but he can't explain how he got there. What do you think about this whole otherworld idea?
Oh, that's interesting. It really blurs the line between what's real and what's fantasy.
Right.
Is it a literal place? a metaphor for a mental state or just a clever fabrication to manipulate the poster?
That's the question, isn't it?
Right. We need more pieces to the puzzle.
Right, and it gets even weirder. Void mentions being watched by these shadows who don't like noise.
Shadows that don't like noise.
Yeah, it's like someone or something is always lurking, watching their every move.
That's creepy. It creates this constant sense of danger.
Totally.
Yeah.
And adds this whole element of surveillance and control.
Right. It implies some kind of power dynamic.
Yeah, like, are these shadows a malevolent force keeping the missing trapped? Or is it a way to control the poster's behavior?
To keep them quiet and compliant.
Exactly. But here's where things get really creepy.
Okay, lay it on me.
A live video feed pops up.
What?
Yeah, it shows this figure that looks like Ryan,
No way.
approaching the camera in this distorted, almost dreamlike version of their childhood street. But something is definitely off.
Like what?
His movements are stiff, his smile is unsettling, and his eyes, well, let's just say they're a little too wide for comfort.
Oh, God. It's like moving from a text-based ghost story to something much more visual, much more visceral. It intensifies the unease, and that question lingers. Is this really Ryan or something else pretending to be him?
And just when you think it can't get any creepier, those shadows start closing in on Ryan in the video. He frantically types, urging the poster to find the door.
Find the door.
Talk about a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah, big time.
It's that classic horror trope.
Yeah.
The sudden interruption, the looming threat, the desperate plea for help.
It totally leaves you on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen next.
So driven by hope and fear, the poster remembers Void mentioning this place from their childhood, an abandoned cabin.
Okay.
They rush over there, find a hidden trapdoor, and go down into this tunnel that leads to,
Yeah.
wait for it, a massive iron door covered in these strange carvings.
Whoa.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, that's intense. It's like a physical connection between the worlds now.
Right.
A portal of some kind.
It makes you wonder what's on the other side of that door.
Right. Is it a passage to another dimension, a trap, or something else entirely?
Exactly. And before the poster can even touch the door, they get another message from Void, a final warning. They know you're here. Don't let them in.
Oh, God.
And suddenly those shadowy figures start seeping through the walls. The poster has to make a split-second decision.
What do?
They open the door and step through.
What?
I know, right?
Oh, that moment of decision is crucial.
Yeah.
It shows just how desperate they are to save their brother.
Right.
They're willing to risk everything, even their own sanity, for a chance to bring Ryan home.
And that's where we leave you hanging, for now.
Oh, man.
What awaits the poster on the other side of that door? We'll find out in part 2 of this deep dive. Okay, so the poster walks through that iron door into who knows what. Can you imagine the courage that takes?
It's mind-blowing, right? I mean, think about it. Everything has led up to this point. The desperate search, the cryptic messages, the glimpses of that other world.
Right.
They're driven by hope and fear, but mostly just this deep love for their brother.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what they find on the other side is exactly what Void described. It's desolate and gray, silent and heavy. And there, standing right in front of them, is Ryan.
Wow.
I can't even imagine that mix of emotions.
Relief, terror. I don't even know.
It's a huge moment, right? It's like the mystery shifts from online speculation to an actual face-to-face encounter with the unknown.
Yeah.
All those questions about whether Void was real, whether Ryan was really trapped.
Right.
Well, now they're confronted with the answers.
Well, at least
partially.
But before they can even process it, all those creepy shadows descend and the poster blacks out.
Oh, no.
They wake up back in their own bed with just this little scrap of paper in their hand.
What?
Yeah, it's in Ryan's handwriting. It says, "Don't stop looking. There's another door." What do you think?
That's strange.
Yeah.
Is it a clue? A warning?
Yeah.
A hallucination? Could be anything.
Right. It's so open-ended.
This note is fascinating because it suggests the mystery isn't over.
Yeah.
It's like there's more to uncover.
Yeah. Is Ryan still trapped? Is he communicating from this other world somehow? And what about this other door?
Right.
What does it represent? Is it a physical portal? A website? A state of mind?
So many possibilities.
It's like the story is inviting us, the listeners, to become part of the mystery.
Oh, I like that.
You know, to try and decipher the clues and figure out what it all means.
It definitely plays on our desire for closure.
For sure. We want to know what happens to Ryan if he's truly safe.
Right.
Keeps us engaged, keeps us thinking.
Okay, so let's switch gears now to the second story.
Yeah.
This one's a different kind of unsettling.
Okay.
But I have to admit, it makes me wonder about families in a whole new way.
I bet.
It starts with a poster. They're originally from New Zealand, but living in the UK, and they're going back home for Christmas after being away for years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, so there's already this underlying tension,
Right.
that anxiety about going back to a place where maybe they don't quite fit in anymore.
It sets the stage perfectly for a psychological thriller, blurring the lines between perception and reality, the pre-existing anxieties, the family tensions.
Right.
It all creates this perfect breeding ground for the uncanny.
And to make things even more intense, their brother, Johnny, is bringing his new girlfriend, Emmy.
Okay.
And everyone seems to absolutely adore her.
Oh, wow.
So the poster's feeling a bit jealous, a bit out of place,
I can see that.
but nothing could prepare them for what happens. Can you imagine the shock?
What is it?
Johnny shows up with Emmy, and she's a mannequin.
Mannequin. What?
Yeah, not a real person. An actual plastic, lifeless mannequin.
That's so bizarre.
It's like this total disruption of expectations.
Right. It makes you question what's normal, what's acceptable within a family.
Exactly. Like the foundation of reality is just crumbling beneath their feet.
It sounds like it.
But here's where it gets truly strange. The entire family treats Emmy like she's real.
What do you mean?
They talk to her, laugh with her, even give her gifts.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
It's like they're all in on this elaborate, creepy joke.
It's like they're gaslighting the poster.
Right.
Making them question their own sanity.
Yeah. It's incredibly unsettling.
It really is. Yeah. And those specific details, like Emmy sitting in the poster spot on the couch, the dog licking her plastic face.
Ugh.
No. It's so calculated and disturbing.
Yeah, like they're deliberately trying to unnerve the poster.
These details are so important. They create this atmosphere of creeping dread. The line between the inanimate and the animate blurs. And the listener starts to feel that same sense of unease that the poster is feeling.
And then there's the way Emmy's position keeps changing when no one's looking.
Huh.
Those lifeless eyes seem to follow the poster around the house.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
Right. Do you think the family's orchestrating all of this? Like moving the mannequin around to freak out the poster?
It's definitely a possibility. It's like a form of psychological manipulation.
Yeah.
But the story leaves room for other interpretations, too.
Oh, for sure.
Is there something supernatural happening? Is Emmy somehow sentient, or is it all just in the poster's head?
Right. The poster even tries to get a sanity check from their grandma.
Yeah.
But their mom shuts them down. Tells them to get over their issues with Emmy.
Wow, so they're being completely isolated.
Yeah, like they're being pushed further into this unsettling reality.
That interaction with the mother is key.
Yeah.
It reinforces this idea that the poster is being excluded,
Right.
that their perception is wrong. It makes you think about family dynamics,
Yeah.
the pressure to conform, and the potential for manipulation within those relationships.
So the poster tries to play along,
But
but things just escalate. Emmy is always watching. Her presence is just looming over everything.
the constant surveillance creates this atmosphere of paranoia.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, is Emmy really watching, or is it just the poster's imagination running wild?
It's that uncertainty that makes the story so effective.
Totally. It keeps you guessing, keeps you on edge.
And then things come to a head with a confrontation on the beach.
Oh boy.
The poster is at their wit's end and finally snaps. They confront Emmy, calling out the absurdity of the whole situation.
What a heck?
The thing is, no one was around to hear it, but the family somehow knows exactly what was said.
What?
And they accuse the poster of being cruel to Emmy.
No way. It's like they have some kind of sixth sense.
Right. Or worse, like Emmy is reporting back to them.
That's where the supernatural element really comes in. The
Yeah.
idea that Emmy isn't just an object, but something more, something connected to the family
Right.
with a way of communicating and observing. It throws everything into question.
So feeling totally isolated and terrified,
Yeah.
the poster cuts their trip short and goes back to the UK.
Okay.
But as they're leaving, they look back and see Emmy standing in the window watching them go.
That's chilling. That final image just cements the unease.
Right.
It's like they haven't escaped at all.
Exactly.
Like something is still watching, waiting.
Yeah.
It leaves you with this lingering sense of dread.
It's a total nightmare. And to make it even worse, when the poster finally talks to their grandma, she mentions how lovely Emmy is, confirming that she's also part of this whole weird charade.
Wow. So the whole family is caught in this web of delusion.
Right. And the poster is the only one who sees the truth.
That confirmation from the grandmother adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah.
It suggests that this isn't just a prank, but something deeper.
Right.
Something rooted in the family's history, their beliefs, their shared reality.
It's like a collective delusion that the poster can't escape no matter how hard they try.
Exactly. And it leaves you wondering, is there any way out?
Right. Or is the poster doomed to be haunted by this experience forever?
It's a question that stays with you long after the story ends.
For sure. It makes you think about the nature of reality,
Definitely.
the power of belief, and the lengths families will go to protect their own.
That's what makes this story so effective.
Well, that's it for part 2 of our deep dive. When we come back for part 3, we'll explore the possible explanations for these two stories and see if we can find any connections between them. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
If you dare. All right, so we've heard these two incredibly unsettling stories, and both of them leave us with this lingering question. What is real?
Yeah, it really makes you think.
In the first story, we had this missing brother, a cryptic online forum, a shadowy other world, and a desperate rescue attempt. I mean, where do we even begin to unpack all of that?
Well, what really strikes me is how the story blends technology with the supernatural.
Right.
The online forum becomes like a gateway. And that video feed is like a window into this fractured reflection world.
Yeah, it's wild.
It makes you wonder, are we more susceptible to these kinds of stories now because of how much we interact with technology?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Like, is it easier to blur those lines between reality and fantasy when it's all happening on a screen?
Yeah, maybe.
But then there's that physical element too. You know, that cabin, the iron door.
Yeah.
It's like the story is saying this other world isn't just online.
Right.
It exists somewhere out there.
It definitely plays on our deep-seated fears.
It does. Like the fear of losing someone you love
Yeah.
and then being trapped somewhere you can't reach.
Exactly. And then there's the fear of the unknown, of something sinister lurking just beyond what we can see.
And what about those shadows? What do you think they represent? Are they real entities or just a manifestation of something else?
Well, they could be a lot of things. They could be a controlling force in that other world.
Right.
Or maybe they're a symbol of the darkness that exists within us, within our families.
That's an interesting thought. What if the real horror isn't the supernatural, but that potential for manipulation and control within our relationships?
That's a scary thought for sure.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the second story,
Yeah.
the mannequin girlfriend. Is it a shared delusion, or is there something darker going on?
I keep going back to those specific details. Like the dog licking Emmy's face and her position changing when no one's looking.
Yeah.
Is the family deliberately gaslighting the poster? Or is it something else? It's like the story wants us to come up with a rational explanation.
Right.
But then it just pulls the rug out from under us.
Right. It's that ambiguity that makes it so effective.
So like,
We're left constantly questioning what's real and what's imagined.
Right.
Is the poster having a mental breakdown, or is there a genuine supernatural element at play? The story doesn't give us any easy answers.
and that's what makes it so unsettling.
Yeah.
And then there's the grandmother who confirms that she's also seen Emmy.
Right. It's like
Yeah.
the poster is being dragged deeper and deeper into this weird family dynamic.
Totally. So what do you think is really going on there?
It almost suggests something generational,
Like what?
like a shared belief system, a family secret, or maybe even some kind of trauma that's been passed down through the generations.
That's a thought.
It's like they've created this alternate reality
Right.
to cope with something painful, something they can't face directly.
So do you think these two stories are just isolated incidents of creepiness? Or could there be a connection?
That's the big question, isn't it? I think they're both about the power of belief.
How so?
Well, in the first story, the poster believes their brother is still alive and that they can save him. And in the second story, the family clings to the belief that Emmy is real,
Yeah.
even though it makes no logical sense. It makes you wonder, what are we willing to believe, even when all the evidence points in the opposite direction?
And maybe, just maybe, these stories are also reflecting our own anxieties back at us.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Our fear of losing loved ones, the fear of being alone, the fear of losing touch with reality.
It's all there. We look for explanations, for patterns, for meaning in all the chaos.
We do.
And sometimes the stories we tell ourselves are the most unsettling ones of all.
So there you have it. Two unsettling stories. Endless possibilities and way more questions than answers. What do you think is going on? What would you do if you found yourself in one of these situations? We may never know the full truth,
That's true.
but maybe that's the whole point. Sometimes the most compelling mysteries are the ones that stay with us long after the story is over.